Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. On the screen opposite me is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amorim. Felipe, how you doing, man? And what are you up to?
How you doing, Laz? How's everyone going? Yeah, well, I'm in Brighton today. How cool is that?
Brighton?
Yeah, why not?
Lovely.
Sunny day, Wednesday, because Wednesday is the closest I have of a day off as a musician, you know. So I said, I've got some stuff to do, some work to do that doesn't involve playing drums, admin stuff and recording the podcast. So, you know what? Let's go to Brighton. That was my thought. So here I am enjoying British summer in all its glory.
Fantastic. Oh, good, man. I mean, this guy's very busy. He is the blues drummer of Soho. So, yeah, you definitely deserve a day off, man. So it's good to hear that you're taking some time for yourself. But anyway, yeah, welcome, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to be doing an album. And it is actually, true to the podcast name. This is an out-and-out rock and roll album. We are doing Bo Diddley's debut album called Bo Diddley from 1958. Felipe, do you want to get us started?
I want to get started with something really interesting. There's some serious branding going on there, isn't it? So the singer, singer-songwriter artist is Bo Diddley, and the album's called Bo Diddley. And you have a song called Bo Diddley. And we have a song called Hey Bo Diddley.
Yeah,
and you have a song called Diddley Daddy.
And then two songs after, it's not exactly Diddley, but you've got Diddy Wah Diddy.
Yes, exactly. So there's like serious promotion of the brand there all the way through, isn't it?
It's incredible.
It's like he's trying to make a point, isn't it?
I've got it at the bottom of my notes. I've said, no greater statement to make on an album than to repeat your unique phrase over and over. Diddley, diddly, dadly, daddy, diddy. It's just like, in all seriousness, that's something that sticks with you. I mean, that's the same as a good album cover, isn't it? You see an album cover, you see, wow, that's got my attention, or that's going to stay with me for a few weeks. This is the same thing. It's just a word, but it works.
Yeah, it is, and it kind of reminds me of like what hip hop singers and rap singers do all the time. They're constantly promoting themselves in a certain way with their songs and their lyrics, talking about themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
If you think about, if you think about Eminem, the rapper, and he's Slim Shady, and in a lot of his songs, he sort of references himself as Shady, and 50 Cent with 50. I don't listen to much rap, and I don't know what P Diddy does in his lyrics. Maybe he says Diddy a lot, but you're right. It's like branding for oneself is good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's really and it helps. It helped with the album to kind of project Bo Diddley into the mainstream, really. And he had some really interesting TV appearances. And he had something interesting live. I want to talk about this, which is not related to the album, but has a lot of historic importance regarding TV performances, because he had a really strong visual performance, kind of dancing and singing, and he had two female guitar players in his band live. They're not in the album, if I'm not wrong. I don't think they are recording the album, but Peggy Jones and Norma Jean Warford, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, they played with Bo Diddley in different incarnations of his band live, and that was a really cool thing to have a female guitar player in the early 60s on TV singing. They were doing BVs and playing with him, so there's really, really cool stuff there. And
yeah, you're right about that. The women in rock and roll, I mean, there's about 4, 5, 6 episodes just in that title alone. But so early on as well, you think that I know that the Beach Boys hired a session bass player called Carol Kay, and she's one of the most famous bass players. If you're a standard guy, if you're a standard person and you're not really a musician or a bass player, then you're not going to have heard of Carol Kay. But she's very famous for having done those sessions with the Beach Boys, and that's Beach Boys were early 60s as well. And to have, like you said, these two female guitarists playing for Bo Diddley live, I mean that's got to be innovative, to say the least, isn't it?
Well, I think again, it seems to me he's constantly making a point, like, I'm not like everyone else. I'm really different. I got a different beat. I got a different band. and bring it, because you had female blues and early rock and roll singers in the scene, but not instrumentalists, not
Exactly.
like going on TV like that. So it's really cool stuff. And one thing, again, I'm saying blues all the time. Why? Not only because I'm a blues fan, but also because, well, as they say, the blues had a baby, right? And they call it rock and roll. So and it's what it is. It's a clear transition from blues to rock and roll, early rock and roll. And I assume that Elvis was influenced by him, and loads of, everyone who came after him, all the early rock and roll guys had some, they've learned something from Bo Diddley. So what makes this album interesting is he was using blues musicians, guys who had a career as blues musicians and composers and songwriters in the band as well. So you have Billy Boy Arnold playing harmonica, and he's got a career of his own as a singer, songwriter, harp player. You have Willie Dixon on bass.
Yeah, I read that. That's incredible, isn't it? The man, the legend on bass.
Yeah, what a legend! Like, great songwriter. He wrote "I Can't Quit You, Baby," "You Shook Me." The songs that Led Zeppelin recorded. So those songs, they have this like huge impact in rock and roll by being part of Led Zeppelin's first album. And Willie Dixon was a great bass player as well, not only a songwriter, and he's in the album playing with him. So there's like loads of musicians there. You also have Frank Kirkland on drums, who is partially responsible for the Bo Diddley groove, which we're going to talk about for sure. And he executed that groove so well, and it's a groove that Bo Diddley himself came up with, isn't it? So, yeah. And that's one of the main things in the album. Anyway.
That's good. Yeah, no, good stuff, man. Well, as usual, I'll do the little Laz details, give you just a little background of the album. So the name of the album is Bo Diddley, and it's by, obviously, Bo Diddley, released in 1958. Now, this is the interesting part. It was recorded between March 1955 and January 1958. And what I read about that was that this is actually a bunch of his... These are the singles that he released in that 3-year period. I think there might be some that, for example, he wrote, maybe he had 6 singles and then he wrote 6 more afterwards to complete the album. But overall, these are the singles that he released between 55 and 58. And the runtime, when we did that first rock and roll album, the Elvis Presley one, it's short. And in the 50s and early 60s, the rock and roll albums, they were short. This one clocking in just under 29 minutes. And the producers were Bo Diddley himself, Leonard and Phil Chess from Chess Records, who produced and then marketed the album. So yeah, they're the details. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know about that.
Yes, the Chess Records were the ones who put the album out, and the brothers, I think, who...
So you see how interesting it is that you have, from the songwriting to the production and obviously including the instrumentalists in the album, you have so many big names involved, like big names, people who had a career of their own and who are equally... Well, it's hard to actually compare, but I would say equally as important to the history of blues and rock and roll as Bo Diddley himself. So you got all those people collaborating in the album and producing and writing songs. And that's like, it sounds to me like it's a result of a big collaboration of great musicians and producers, having Bo Diddley as the face and the voice of the project.
Well, and the primary songwriter, because he wrote most of these songs, which again, that's quite an unusual thing for a rock and roll album, isn't it? When you think about blues albums and rock and roll, especially in the 50s, we look at that first Elvis one, there are a fair few covers on there. I've done my research, and I believe that I'm sure I've written it down if I got it, if it isn't, but Bo Diddley wrote nearly all of these, and if he didn't write them on his own, he co-wrote them. So one of them's co-written with Willie Dixon, one of them's co-written with a blues guy called Harvey Fuqua. I want to get that right, but yes, that's it. But again, he's written all his own music, which at that time, very innovative, very pioneering, showing that actually, do you know what? And I think what's interesting is that these songs, I mean, we'll dissect the songs when we go through them, but there's nothing overly special or different or unique about them in terms of the songwriting and the structures. He didn't do anything crazy in terms of, Bohemian Rhapsody and putting a 2-minute opera section in one of them. He didn't, I don't feel like he pioneered anything crazy in terms of arranging. But what we're going to talk about is his instrumentation, his rhythms, and that is what pioneered and took us on this journey from blues to this newfound rock and roll. So why don't you get us started by explaining to us, and this is a very important theme of the album, people, this is the Bo Diddley beat, and Felipe is going to go and talk us through it.
Yes, the Bo Diddley beat, or the Bo Diddley groove, is an iconic groove that he came up with himself. So, give the guy some credit to put his name on everything, because that's he was a genius, really. But the interesting thing about that is not like, well, he came up with the groove and put a name on it, but it comes from something else, right? Yeah. So you have the New Orleans beat, which is similar to that, and you have the a Latin clave, which is a 3/2 clave. So basically, what's a clave is a rhythm that you repeat, you loop it and repeat it, and it's kind of a basic, is a foundation for something that's going to be played on top of it.
So when someone's playing a rhythm like a clave in some bossa music or some sort of the South American music, then the clave establishes the rhythm, and the other instruments join in on top and then add their rhythms around it, right?
Exactly, that's what a clave is. So the clave, the 3/2 clave, why do you call it like this? Because you have 3 hits and a bit of a gap, and then 2 hits. So like ba 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 ba. That's the 3/2 clave. Dun 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 dun, and that happens all the time in the album. Here's the thing: I think it's really brave from Bo Diddley, is he wasn't afraid of repeating the formula. It's like, I found this thing, I'm adapting this like New Orleans or 3/2 clave into my own thing. I'm turning into my own thing, and I'm insisting on it. I'm going to put this everywhere in the album. And it appears in different forms, because basically it's not necessarily led by the drums, because at some point it's the guitar doing that, dun, 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 and the drums play something else on top of it. They don't necessarily follow. So you have a variation on that on guitar in some songs, with a train groove, which is a country kind of beat on the snare. So the drums are not necessarily following that riff all the time. I've sent you a link, Laz, which we can add to the podcast at some point, so if people want to check it out. It's an American drummer called, I need to quote his name correctly, Stuart Jean, I guess, and he.
Did he play for Bo Diddley?
He played with Bo Diddley when Bo Diddley was 72 years old at the time that this guy played with him, and he basically learned the groove. Well, he played the groove in a rehearsal with Bo Diddley. It's like, is this the beat? And Bo Diddley said, yeah, well, not quite, because I play, and Bo Diddley showed him, played the drums himself, showed where he should be playing the bass drum in a different way, whatever. So basically, he showed to this accomplished session drummer that, like, he came up with the groove himself, that version of the groove. So he could play on the drums at the age of 72, being a singer guitar player, but he could play the drums, and he showed the guy, this is the groove, this is my groove, which, again, is not entirely new. You can find traces of that with the 3/2 clave, with Latin music, and you can find that in the New Orleans tradition as well. But he made it a thing of his own, and he, as I said, he had a point. It's like the guy had an axe to grind. It's like, this is my groove. I'm going to play it all over the album. So again, it's interesting because sometimes it's subtle when you have the guitar doing it and the drums and percussion doing something else. And sometimes it's really in your face. Here's the Bo Diddley groove, and it's loud and clear, and it's the main element of the album. Also, you have maracas on top of it. You have percussion on top of it. emphasizing the groove, playing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, this is the groove. And I think the groove itself is what makes this album a rock and roll album instead of a blues album.
Now, what I was reading when I was doing my research is, as well as his influence from the clave, there is a particular style called juba, which is African American style of dance that involves rhythmic percussion using one's body. So stomping, clapping, hitting your chest, patting your arms, and you're smacking your legs, stuff like that. It was known the hambon style, or hambone maybe, all known as the juba dance.
Exactly. So that's why it is an innovation, really. It's not just repeating that clave we talked about. So the groove is the main thing, and the instrumentation as well. And one really, really strong element of that beat is the tremolo effect on guitar. That is like such a crucial part of the album. He also made that effect quite popular with this album. So and loads of people obviously started to try to emulate him doing that. So so I think what makes this album really rock and roll is not being afraid of using your formula. Like, I came up with something, it's my own thing, and I'm going to put my name on it, I'm going to insist, and I'm going to put it all over the album, and I'm going to turn the blues into something really new. So I think Bo Diddley and this album especially, they have such an importance in rock and roll history. Just I would say that this album, or let's say Bo Diddley as an artist, is as important as Muddy Waters, is as important as Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Elvis, because he actually reinvented something in order to make it rock and roll.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing, we'll talk about it when we get to the songs, but you're seeing the transition from American electric blues going into this newfound rock and roll, which I thought was sort of key with this album. But yeah, I think that's good because we covered the Bo Diddley beat. People now know what it is and what it sounds like. If you still didn't get it, listen to the album, and track 1, Bo Diddley, track 5, Hey Bo Diddley, track 7, Hush Your Mouth, and track 12, Pretty Thing. They all are perfect examples of the Bo Diddley beat. And as you can hear, it's just the beat going over and over again, but with different layers of percussion. Sometimes the bass is going along with the beat, sometimes it doesn't, but you just constantly have the underlying boom, 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 bum, bum, boom, boom, boom. And that, Laz Felipe said, is the bass, BASE, of the song. It's the underlying foundation of each
foundation.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, and it's what also interested me about this album was you mentioned the guitar, and I think what was so fundamentally different is having listened to blues music, and I'm not a blues connoisseur, like yourself. You listen and you play a lot of blues, so so do tell me if I'm wrong, but I've always felt that the guitar in blues has had a strong, significant part to play, whether it's just keeping the chords going, like that, then going up to the or maybe in the slow blues, just holding a chord, letting it ring. What I found interesting about this album was the guitar riffing and playing little motifs and melodies within the songs. So think about track 1, Bo Diddley. After he finishes his vocals, you've got the guitar just filling a little section of music going and repeats it, and then he goes back to the vocals. Do diddly dam in a dam or ring. It's like it's riffing.
It's here's the thing though, that it's all about rhythm, isn't it? The guitar is very rhythmic, and it's when you think about modern guitar players, they're usually recognized by their solos, and everyone's told that guy's really good because he can play really creative solos, either if the solos are technical or just really melodic. Like Slash is famous for melodic solos, and so is David Gilmour, and you have loads of other players who are famous for playing fast solos. You got guitar players are usually recognized by their ability to solo. And if you think about Bo Diddley, he was famous for playing rhythm guitar, and for playing strong, recognizable riffs, like really remarkable guitar parts that were mainly rhythmic instead of instead of being a soloist or mainly a soloist. So that's what's interesting. Is you listen to Who Do You Love? You have a for the standards of this album, you have a fairly long solo at the beginning and another one at the end. And most of the album is just rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. That's what it's all about: the guitar, the percussion, the drums, and it's and if you think about rock and roll, even the words, and if you're rocking and rolling, it has a lot to do with rhythm.
Yeah,
because rocking and rolling, it's about moving, isn't it? It's about bouncing, and that's what it is. And I think that's why the albums. I want to say a couple of more things. But one thing about the legacy of this groove that sometimes we forget is this groove is so present in modern music. Valerie by Amy Winehouse has that Bo Diddley groove.
Oh yeah,
have you ever thought of it?
Yeah, brilliant.
But there's a snare playing some sort of backbeat that makes it feel like it's double tempo. Right. But the kick and the bass are doing boom, 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 boom. Valerie. Yeah. So it's the same. Another song that uses that element with loads of other layers on top is Rosanna by Toto.
Okay.
And Jeff Porcaro, the drummer himself, said he played a Purdy show for all the drummers around. Bernard Purdy is a famous session drummer, and Jeff Porcaro took the hands pattern, hi-hat and snare from him and played a Bo Diddley. He mentions that, like when he's explaining the groove, I play the Bo Diddley on the bass. So Rosanna by Toto has a Bo Diddley kick drum pattern on it, and Valerie by Amy Winehouse has a Bo Diddley groove on it, and you can find it in like thousands of songs. It's there, it's everywhere.
It's so. I don't want to say important because it's not like we'd be here. It's not. I'm not saying that modern music would be different without it, but it's rubber stamped a moment in time where a musician thought, you know what, I'll take the blues chords and progressions and I'll mix it with some African American and Afro-Cuban rhythms, and we're going to call this Bo Diddley rock and roll.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Interesting. You mentioned the African origins of the groove as well, and of the music itself, the blues itself. The song "Before You Accuse Me" is a shuffle, so it's more traditional. It's more blues than rock and roll, with kind of a loud snare playing the backbeat compared to the Bo Diddley groove. But that song has a call and response kind of lyrics, and it repeats the melody and the lyrics. You say a phrase and you say it again. That's African tradition as well. So you got that on the vocals and the melody.
There's actually a lot of call and response on the album. There's one on the track "Pretty Thing," also "Diddly Daddy." I think those are the ones I've got so far. Maybe there's others, but but like you said, it's just fascinating that he's taken these elements. So why would you associate that with African American music, the call and response?
Well, because that's the idea of the melodies that one person sings and the other one shouts. The African American tradition is that some people say that the slaves on the cotton fields would sing to each other. So one guy would sing a line and the other guy from the other side of the field would sing it back to him, and that's part of the tradition. So before you accuse me, take a look at yourself. Before you accuse me, take a look at yourself. It simply says that phrase twice, and that's a song about relationship conflicts. Here's the other thing about the album is that the lyrics are quite diverse for the time, so it's not and that's the other thing that takes it away from blues and turns into rock and roll. We usually associate blues with suffering, so then you have that in Before You Accuse Me, because it's like, well, there's a clear relationship conflict there. But when you listen to Dearest Darling, it's a true love song. It's romantic, not sexual at all. It's not dirty like the blues stuff. It's more like someone is is in love. And there's a line that I love: "If I get to heaven before you do, I'll try to make a hole and pull you through."
Aw. That
It's
is
so beautiful, and there's loads of religious references in that song. And I would say there's a heavenly piano melody at the end. It's a song about love, and it shows appreciation to the female, and that he's talking to. It's not like the female character in the song is not just there as she is the main role. She's not like just a girl that he wants to have for a night. That he's like, I'm in love with you. You're the most important thing in my life. That's the kind of message you have with some of the lyrics in the album. And it's really cool, beautiful. Yeah. I think that I suggest people listen to "Dearest Darling" because it's not the most famous song in the album, but it's probably my favorite, let's say. And
we're gonna have all the songs of the album will be on the playlist, and any others that we mention will be there. So, for example, you said before you accused me, the legacy this has had, it was covered by Eric Clapton and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now, a lot of people have covered some of Bo Diddley's songs. The funniest thing, I think, did I have a list of who's covered it? It's tracks. Oh no, I'll tell you what it was. It was "Hey Bo Diddley." It's funny that people are singing and covering music that was like, I understand covering a song that doesn't have the artist's name in it originally, but these artists, the ones who are covering the songs, they're like, "Oh, no, fuck it, we'll cover the song "Hey Bo Diddley." Like, why not?
Yeah. Why not? This is great, man. Because it's great. I mean, I think it really resonates with people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
because you got like a couple of elements there that actually resonate with common people. One is rhythm. Rhythm is it's so basic, it plays with your instincts. I think it's the foundation of music is rhythm. So because the album is focused on the rhythm, it does make it really easy to communicate with people and to resonate with people. So the other thing is the content of the lyrics. We're talking about true love, and we're talking about relationship issues, and you have that song "Say Boss Man," which is about struggling with money. So I've got 19 kids. I can't feed my children, and I'm struggling with my payment, and I can't pay my landlord. He's going to kick out of my house. That kind of stuff. So it makes it's kind of almost like comic somehow, but it's about working class people's struggle.
It was actually, that was my favourite song on the album. And for me, it was the music. I mean, I felt it really had this ragtime feel about it. It really reminded me of sort of Scott Joplin's music, and the theme from the movie The Third Man. So these will all be in the playlist. But I think what did it most was the kind of honky-tonk piano that was going on in the background. Really lovely, wasn't it? There was even some sort of, what did I have in my notes? Now, this is interesting. The backing vocals in those in that song, "Say Boss Man," I was hearing like 3-part vocal harmonies. Now that's not normal for blues or rock and roll. So are we hearing the first elements of what would go on to become British pop? Because the British bands like the Animals went over and learned what they did from people like Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Bo Diddley. Is things like doo-wop backing vocals, 3-part harmonies, 3-part vocal harmonies? Are we hearing early instances of modern pop music in general?
Well, I think so, because I think one of the main things in modern pop music is obviously vocals, but vocal harmonies as well. And I think when you have vocal harmonies, you're inviting people to sing along, isn't it? Because you have loads of voices in there. So you think like, I want to be one of those voices. I want to sing along. And "Who Do You Love?" It's a classic kind of, I'm inviting you to sing along, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's and obviously "Hey Bo Diddley." It's like, and actually he's inviting the audience to say his name. How many times have we said Bo Diddley today?
And how many more times will we say it?
So imagine, I love when I say that, when people say to me like, "Oh, what's your favorite drum groove?" And I would mention a few grooves like the train groove, etc. But I say, well, you know what? I love the groove, the Bo Diddley groove from the album Bo Diddley by the artist Bo Diddley and the song Bo Diddley.
And also found in the song "Hey Bo Diddley."
Exactly.
I think what would be a good thing to touch on that we haven't touched on yet, to this extent, is the blues, because obviously Bo Diddley has come from he used to play in Chicago street bands, where I believe that jazz and early forms of blues was very predominant and prevalent. Now you've got songs, like a lot of songs here are blues. You know, the I'm a Man track 2. That's the classic. That was inspired by Hoochie Coochie Man.
Yeah. So that's the classic. Bah, bah, bah. You have that riff. There's no way that you play that riff and people don't recognize it from something. They might think of Hoochie Coochie Man. They might think about Manish Boy. They might think it's from I'm a Man. But I'm a Man is that's the bluesiest song in the album, isn't it?
Muddy Waters. So Hoochie Coochie Man was covered by Muddy Waters and written by Willie Dixon. Then Bo Diddley wrote I'm a Man in response to Hoochie Coochie Man. And in response to I'm a Man, Muddy Waters wrote Manish Boy.
There you go.
All in the same field, the same thing. But then you've got, this is interesting. So, you know, songs like Before You Accuse Me, which is an obvious blues progression. What other ones? Diddy Wah Diddy. You know, you've got the predominant blues influence from Willie Dixon, because that was the song they co-wrote together. But the one that I found interesting was the song number 3, Bring It to Jerome, because it has such a huge and emphatic blues feel to it, but there's not a blues progression.
All right. See, I didn't notice that.
And
because I don't think about chords.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah, no. But what I found interesting was that having identified that, the next thing I went on to identify is how many songs on this album are just one riff or one chord being jammed for the whole 3 minutes. You've got Dearest Darling, Hush Your Mouth, Diddly Daddy, Pretty Thing. All of these ones are just one chord, one riff, one idea being replayed over and over with different lyrics, different guitar riffs going on, different, you know, percussive takes on the beat. And I thought that was interesting, just the jamming element, not progressing harmonically in chords.
Yeah, not going anywhere in terms of chords, but in terms of rhythm. Again, rhythm is the boss, really. It's what leads
rhythm and melody.
Because which are the most, in my opinion, the most basic elements of music is what people really, really understand from music before they start analyzing. What you get from music mainly is rhythm and melody, because obviously the melody is carrying the lyrics within itself. So obviously you got to listen to that. But the rhythm, it's what everyone can understand, regardless of the language. That's the beauty of rhythm. If you don't speak the language, you don't understand the language that the singer is singing, but you can still dance to the groove. It's beautiful. So and the legacy of this album is it's massive. I think it has become a big let's say template for rock and roll and pop music, you know, from the vocal harmonies to the grooves and the arrangement and everything else. So it is like a template for modern pop music and rock and roll.
You're absolutely right, man. Yeah, and the thing is that just the song, just track 1, Bo Diddley. Check this out. It was inducted into the Grammy. It was given a Grammy Hall of Fame award. It was one of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. It was added to the Library of Congress National Recording Registry, and it was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame. Those are 4 huge accolades that this one song has done. And I think it's fair to say that this one song represents the album, because although, like we said, it is his singles and music from a 3-year span, this song sums everything up. You've got the guitar riffing, you've got his call and response with the guitar, you've got essentially just jamming on one chord for the whole song, and most importantly, you've got the Bo Diddley beat. And that's the song that represents the album. But check this out. This is what someone's had to say about the album. soaked with futuristic waves of tremolo guitar set to an ageless nursery rhyme. The result was not exactly blues or even straight R&B, but a new kind of guitar-based rock and roll soaked in the blues and R&B, but owing its allegiance to neither.
Wow.
Does that
Wow,
not
that is a
summarize? That's perfect, but does it not say that this is one of rock and roll's first albums?
it is
It is,
for
isn't it?
sure.
It's the result of the marriage
And I would
between blues
say
and R&B.
And I would say it's the fact that he wasn't necessarily trying to create rock and roll or be rock and roll. He was just getting everything he could from the foundations of blues and said, no, I want to shake things up. I don't want to do the same thing that everyone else is doing. I really want to go crazy with my creativity, go as far as I can go, and really stretch the possibilities and turn that music genre into something completely new. That would sound, it might not sound that different from the things we can hear nowadays, because it is the basis of the things we hear.
Yeah, but at the time, that's when it was so innovative and so pioneering. And as we said from episode 1, rock and roll equals musical freedom. And in this case, it literally does.
It does.
He created rock and roll, or one of the first rock and roll albums, out of his wish to play music freely. Taking many genres, many instrument types, many rhythmic types, many different progressions, and molding them into his one new Bo Diddley rock and roll. So yeah, what an album. I mean, fantastic stuff. I mean, I think that's a good place.
How many times have we said over the last year or so, what an album, isn't it? We because we analyzing these masterpieces, and it's such a pleasure to listen to music and talk about it, and I, the podcast made me listen to this album again, and actually it's just so entertaining. I mean, what an album! What an album!
And I think you summed it up for me, where when I was doing my research. So as I said last week, I'm trying to listen to but before, if we had a recording session sort of booked in, like a podcast recording session, I would listen to some stuff in the days before. But what I'm trying to do is week to week, I'm just trying to completely immerse myself in one album or one band. And the whole time I'm listening to this album, I just can't stop moving my body. Whether I'm typing, when I'm holding my phone making notes, and then on my chest just going ba, 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 ba. Or if my foot's tapping because I'm typing on the laptop, something is moving on my body.
You know what? I'm going to walk to the beach now to the sound of Bo Diddley. I'm going to be listening to that in my head. I'm going to be bam, 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 all the way. And it's whoever's a musician, if you never played that beat, just play it on guitar, drums, percussion, bass, whatever.
It kind of like gets your whole body alive and shaking, doesn't it?
It's it makes you rock and roll.
There we go. Fantastic. I think that's a good place to leave it for now. I mean, did you? Is there any other thing you wanted to talk about? Any of the songs? Anything in particular you wanted to mention?
I just want to mention that the song "Say Boss Man" has a which,
what an Elvis!
There's no like kind of it's the same sort of stuff that Elvis would do.
Ah, wow, that's really interesting. So, you remember about Elvis's album? We spoke about how unique his vocals were with some of the little "I sing" that he used to do, and now we've got Bo Diddley doing it as well. So again, another thing that we've had from two early rock and roll artists, just showing that actually, the voice can do many things other than speak words. It can be an instrument, and we know this.
Yeah, it is, and wow, I mean. What
fantastic stuff, yeah. I mean, we'll end like this. I will just quickly throw in a segment. We're going to quickly do How Rock and Roll Is That? And for that, I'm just going to simply ask Felipe, Bo Diddley took the juba and the ham bone rhythm. He took inspiration from music he was hearing from Afro-Cuban influenced music, and he created his own Bo Diddley beat. And fashioned instruments and rhythms around it to emphasize that beat even more, and named it after himself. How rock and roll is that?
I'll give it a 90 out of 100.
It is, and it is a rhythm that we have spoken about enough already today, but it is just one of those legacy-defining rhythms.
And considered, especially if you consider that this has been done in 1958.
Well, the first song, 55.
55, there you go.
So the album 58, but the first time we heard it was 55. So yeah, what an album. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode. I mean, it's been a short one, but it's a short album, and I think we've covered all the essential topics. You know, what things to take from this album, the blues influence that you hear, but he doesn't define the songs by the blues, your standard blues chord progression, just like we said before. Which one was it? Bring It to Jerome. It has that blues feel and rhythm, but it doesn't progress the same way a blues song would. Next thing is the Bo Diddley beat that is so predominant throughout the whole album. Your next thing you got is the call and response, sometimes between his voice and the band's voices, his voice and his guitar. The other thing you've got is the examples of them jamming just on one chord or one riff for the whole song. The other thing you've got is the guitar, the electric tremolo guitar, riffing and doing unique stuff that we haven't really heard before in this kind of music. So many things to take from this album. Go and have a listen. The whole album will be in the playlist, plus some covers that if people have covered these songs, we'll put them in. And on top of that, any other song we've mentioned. So once again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great time here. Felipe, any last words?
Well, it's been a pleasure. So, and listen to the album and dance to the album. And keep on rocking and rolling, everyone.
And quickly, before I do my normal end line, I'm going to say your line. Guys, you can find us on the internet. And as usual, guys, have a lovely couple of weeks. We'll see you next time, and long live rock and roll.